Welcome, everyone, to this Good Leadership Podcast. My name is Charles Good, your host and the president of the Institute for Management Studies. This podcast is designed to provide you with actionable insights and tools that you can use from discussing the research, stories, and background from recognized experts and practitioners to accelerate your impact in your current role. Welcome, everyone, to this IMS Good Leadership Podcast. My name is Charles Good, your host and the president of the Institute for Management Studies. Today, I'm glad to be joined by Dr. Jason Womack, who's an instructor of leadership studies at a military university and author of several best-selling books, including his latest one, Get Momentum, which will be the focus of today's program. He admits that life is busy, but he won't compromise when it comes to increasing his productivity and maximizing time for his most important tasks. Welcome to the program again, Jason.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you, everyone, for being with us a little bit of time today.
I love to start each episode with just giving some history on the book, because from a recent podcast that I watched of Jody, you had brought this idea of this book to her, and within 24 hours, the proposal was due.
So the good news is that we had published a book with John Wiley and Sons, who I adore. So thank you, Wiley and Sons, for supporting us. And over coffee one morning, I told Jody, I said, hey, I've been using these same questions, and I'd been using them, Charles, for probably about a year, 8 months, maybe a year with our executive coaching clients. Now, full transparency, there were 8 questions that I had been using. I had been pulling from them during the coaching sessions. And over coffee one morning, Jody said, well, why don't we write to the publisher and see if they would want it? And so from my phone, I sent a little email very quick to our publisher, and they got back and said, get us a proposal. We should be able to look at it tomorrow morning. We sent the proposal over. We had a book contract by that Friday, and then the book was on the shelves in 7 months.
Wow.
What I hope that listeners and watchers take away from this is the mantra that I have, which is just get started. Nike has the one called Just Do It. I know for the folks that I get to work with, sometimes a goal that you have, an initiative you want to take on, maybe it seems too big. So what did we start with? I started by using questions. I spent 8 to 12 months. I talked to Jody. I sent an email from my phone. I then sent a proposal and got a contract. So just get started would be the first bit of advice that I would offer.
That's a great story. And everyone feels stuck at some point in their life, whether it's a project, whether it's a part of their life. And you identify in the book, which is great, what being stuck sounds like, looks like, and feel like, because you really want to be able to relate to that feeling and for them to say, yes, that's me, right? So that when you give them those phases, those questions, they can start making meaningful momentum on whatever it is they're stuck on. So if you could just kind of unpack, how do we really identify what's stopping us?
Again, I love that question. It sets me up for a nice little platform. Here's what I would encourage you to do. Carry a notepad and a pen. If you have a phone, just send yourself an email every time you think this statement. Someone should. Charles, here's what I know. Anytime I hear someone start a statement with someone should, then what they do is they describe what they wish was true, what they wish could happen, what they wish they had. And then I'll ask them, well, what if the someone is you? And all of a sudden we start discussing, they usually start explaining. That is what I mean by stuck, Charles. I'm not talking about the project that you've procrastinated on or that you don't have finances or some other resource for. That requires a different approach. What I'm asking folks to do is to really, and I mean this, look in the mirror and wonder. Let your mind wander. What is it that I'm here to fix? What am I here to make better? What am I here to engage in? And for me, Charles, anything that I've ever taken on as a bigger than what I thought was possible started with someone should. In the case of Get Momentum, someone should write a book so that mentors have questions to ask their mentees. So in a lot of the work that I did as a coach, My job was to get my clients to clarify their goals. A lot of the clients I serve are mentors. Mentors are there to help their mentees achieve their goals. The difference is slight, but very significant. And what I found is that many of the people that I work with as mentors, and if any of you are mentors or parents, it's about the same. Think about to yourself when you sit down and you're going to help your protege, you're going to help your mentee gain that next step in her or his career. What questions do you ask? Sure, you could give them another book to read or another TED Talk to watch or another conference to go to. But I have found the most powerful thing that I can do for someone is I can plant the seed of a question that we revisit over time. And so Get Momentum, the goal of Get Momentum was for my mentors, leaders. Here are 5 questions that I want you to ask your mentee over 5 different sessions. And so if they needed a toolkit, maybe it's a field guide. If they sit down with their mentee and they know they've got an hour, here's the question to explore. And then when they schedule the second meeting, here's the second question to explore. And for most folks, if I could get them to go through a 5 mentor meeting routine or schedule, well, the feedback came back positive.
That's great. I'd love to go through that a little more in detail, those 5 stages of momentum, and just kind of get someone started that's listening to say, okay, what would be that first step or that first question I would ask?
Sure. So I mentioned a moment ago, I alluded to that view of the mirror. And the first question that I ask someone is, what do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known for? Now, this will sound like, or it'll bring back memories for us old folks. It's going to sound like the legacy question that Dr. Stephen Covey used to ask. He said, how do you want to be remembered? Which for me, again, slight but significant difference. So here's what I do. And I took part of this from Stephen Covey, where he went through the concept of roles. So my professional roles, I'm a teacher, I'm a researcher, I'm an author, I'm a professional speaker. Or my personal roles, I'm a husband, I'm a triathlete, I'm a son, I'm a friend. Well, there's 8 roles, Charles, and each one of those roles has a context-based, what do I want to be known for? A lot of my known fors changed during the pandemic. I wasn't able to visit my parents for 18 months. So what do I want to be known for as a son needed to be reevaluated. During the pandemic is when I got my doctoral degree. What do I want to be known for as a researcher? And so that first question, it's context dependent, not only in where am I in a career, but also who's around me and what's the environment dictating around me. People ask me, how often do I update my known for statements? I would say update them when shift happens. So if you're looking at taking on a new career, if you're moving up in a position, quite frankly, the age limit on this, I haven't met yet. I've got people who retired and now they have a known for as being a community volunteer, being a grandparent. I've gotten folks who have switched jobs right when they were at the top of one organization and another one came knocking on the door. And as they moved to that other organization, we had to redefine, we had to redescribe what they want to be known for.
Once they've done that first stage, that legacy question, let's move on to the second question or the second stage and just kind of give them a little teaser of that.
Absolutely. And as I'm reflecting on this, kind of thinking about these stages, I mentioned a moment ago that they go, one question to the next, to the next. Here's what I found, Charles, is people will ask the question that needs to be answered in that moment. And for example, right now I'm just so keyed in on the concept of, and I mentioned a moment ago, that environment of who's around. The question I ask is, whom can I learn from? Now, of course, someone's going to think of, oh, I could ask my boss to sit down with me and she or he could share their journey that they've had. I'll also go to a current living speaker, author, a TED talker. But this Charles, this is where I go to the past. I'll go grab a biography or an autobiography. And what I found is if I can move between this concept of what is it I want to be known for? And then I put that, not necessarily a bookend, but if I can add to the mix, whom can I learn from? So I'll give you a very solid tactic on this one. If I asked you to take one of those roles that you've got, right? Take a work role, you put it in the middle of a piece of paper. Okay. So there you go. You've got your work role about what you want to be known for. And then, like spokes of a wheel coming out of the middle of the hub, I might put the names of people around that spoke just so that I can see, well, who could I reach out to? Who could I learn from? And that process, it's a lot of fun for me. It gets me started in that process of gaining the momentum that I want to make sure that I have.
Well, it doesn't have to be someone you know, like you stated. You could have a book. It could be a famous person, someone that's deceased, someone that's alive. So you can learn from all sorts of sources, from all sorts of individuals. You advocate, which I completely agree with, the mentoring relationship and having some great mentors. But that mentoring relationship doesn't necessarily, I mean, often it is someone that you know that's taking an interest in you, but you could have mentors that maybe you don't have a relationship with, but that you felt that have provided you advice, right? That you can benefit from in your career or in life.
And what I found is that we've all got them, right? We've all got people that either helped us along the way to get to where we needed to be. One of the things that I love talking with people about, Charles, is what are the mentors? And I'm going to say this with a little bit of pause. What are the mentors that have gotten me as far as they can get me? Which are the ones that when I talk to and I share a dream, an idea, something that I'm moving towards, if they have a difficult time seeing me in that next role, that's a great time to come back to and really, I'd say, double down on, am I committed to stepping into this role? Am I committed to stepping toward that known for that I want to make sure that I move towards?
Love for us just to kind of unpack those other three just briefly before we move into the other topic on motivation. Just so, since you stated you can do it in a serial process, one after the other, but you have a tendency to go to that one that really connects or resonates with you, right?
So now I'm thinking a third question that I might ask is, where am I winning? Where am I making progress? Where can I look around and go, wow, I'm chipping away at this? And what I have found, Charles, is there's two ways to go about that. One is, of course, to take a look at the past. A favorite tactic I have is I'll ask people to open their sent items in their email and go back 90 days to 120 days and look at the kinds of emails you used to send, the kinds of projects that used to stress you out, the emergencies of 90 to 180 days ago that are no longer. And now I can sit back and I can go, wow, I have made progress. I have moved the mission forward a little bit more than I had thought I had. And then the other tactic I have, and this one I got this from Frances Hesselbein, who she got it from Peter Drucker. So talk about learning from people who have passed on from us. I'll open my calendar. I'll go out 90 days. I'll go out 180 days. I'll pick a day at random. I open that day. I use a digital calendar. You can use this if you use a paper-based one as well. And what I'll do, Charles, is I'll write a few sentences. I'll write a few lines of what do I expect my work to look like? What will I expect my life to look like? And in that paragraph, maybe those two paragraphs, because it's so far away, regularly, time will pass. I'll get through the few months. I'll get to that point in time, completely having forgotten that I wrote anything down. And I'll look at that note. I'll pull it up, Charles. And in full transparency, there's always one of two things that happens. This one's I'll give you the more common one next. One thing that happens is, whoa, I radically undershot what I thought was possible. I thought we were going to overshoot somewhere way up in here. We only got here. Every now and then that happens. What I love about this, and it's going to bring forward a little bit of energy for some folks, is I will think we'll have been here and we didn't quite come in there. Me, I use that as a motivator. I use that as a wonderful, now let me calibrate that difference or the intersection between anticipation and expectation. Of course, then I want to do some kind of, what do they call it in the business word? Post-mortem, right? What I want to do is I want to go, why? Why did I think we would be at a certain place and we only got somewhere? Almost every time I unpack it, it comes back to the second question that I gave you. I did not ask for the help that I could have asked for. I did not reach out to the people who could have made that a little bit easier. Those like first three questions as we're going through, identifying what you want to be known for, surrounding yourself by the folks that could help you along the way, and then doing some kind of a celebration of success.
Great questions to ask yourself. And you state as part of this framework, the critical piece of this formula is motivation. I wanted just to spend a little bit of time on what is motivation really, and there's a difference between being motivated and getting motivated.
So when we were writing the book, Get Momentum, we hoped that we hope that you'll understand that motivation is something that you get and then you go get it again, and then you go get it again. Notice it's not got momentum. I'm not giving it one time and then I'm good for life. And so when I think of motivation, I made it 3 words, Charles. It's motive for action. And so what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have compared and contrasted, and the research is out there. Probably the popular one right now is Daniel Pink, who wrote the book Drive, and he talked about those big motivating factors, right? Mastery and autonomy, for example. For me, it was a little bit more foundational based, intrinsic and extrinsic. So intrinsically, what's inside of me that I can feed? What thought, what hope, dream, what belief that's inside of me? I want to be a great son. I want to be a great speaker. Intrinsically. Now what I need to do is I need to externalize that. Well, it's 2023. Being a great son means X, Y, and Z. Wonderful. Whom can I learn from? How can I celebrate the wins? Let's go to extrinsic. And for some of you watching or listening to this, this may be more objective and it might be easier to grab onto. What does your organization reward? What does my organization acknowledge? I love, and again, time stamping this, I love having these conversations in the back 2 months and the first 2 months of a year. That 4-month window, that's when people are settling down and they're wondering, where did the time go at the end of the year? And then at the beginning of the year, look how much time we have. And by the way, that's a refrain I hear every year. What I want to do is I want to sit down with my boss and go, boss, what are you going to reward? What are you going to acknowledge? And too many times, and I'm thinking specifically right now about Sheryl Sandberg's work called Lean In. And my wife, Jody, she would talk to any of you about this. But for years and years, Jody ran the mindset that if she did good work, it would be noticed. And yet she was doing good work and it wasn't always being noticed. And she then started using some of these foundational principles from the current workplace. Specifically, folks, sit down with your manager, with your rater, with whoever's going to write your performance appraisal or do your mid-year review. And for me, it's Kim Scott would call this a radical candor question. I will simply ask my boss, what are you going to recognize this year? What are you going to acknowledge this year? Now, here's the little caveat. If what they give me is not motivating. Now, of course, someone's going to go, well, how do you know if it's not motivating? Trust me, you're going to know if it's not motivating. If what they give me is not motivating, that's when it's time to sit back, relax, review that piece of paper that's called, what do I want to be known for in this role, in this organization? So when I think about motivation, I'm going to think about those two, the intersection of intrinsic, why am I on the planet, with extrinsic, what are the powers at be going to recognize? And then how do I manifest my way and work my way through that?
Thank you for providing that explanation of motivation. So, as we end, I'd like to just give our listeners some takeaways. And you mentioned there's three ways, there's probably more than three ways that you can get momentum on your goals. And momentum tip number one, you mentioned, is manage your long-term goals by building consistency into your daily routine. This gets back to that motivation piece. I read a good book recently, had Jeff Hayden on the podcast. He did the motivation myth, and he said there's only one recipe for gaining motivation: success. Those long-range goals, there's a chasm between here and there. So if you want to stay motivated, if you want to stay on track, if you want to keep progress toward those things you hope to achieve, the key is to enjoy those small, minor successes on a daily basis, which is really kind of what you're talking about in this first tip, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I would say how to magnify that is to go where that success is on such a low scale. When I was writing my first book way back when, I joined a writing group. And I'm going so far back in time. This was when we used to have the freeconferencecall.com phone numbers, and we did our writing groups on conference call. But here was the deal. I knew every Wednesday night from 7 to 9 p.m., we were supposed to gather and write in silence. I can tell you right now, moving to where success was happening helped me build upon that success.
So having a goal that's more than a year out, you recommend to put it on, schedule time with it every day so that you make progress on it and can celebrate those wins every day as you're making progress to meet that long-term goal.
The quick math on that, 15 minutes a day is roughly 100 hours a year. I would submit to you that there are projects that if you worked on for 100 hours over the next year, you'll be closer to finished on than if you didn't. The problem is I'm not given 100 hours at a time. Now, some days I can chip away at 15 minutes. Some days I can chip away at an hour. Some days I'm going to miss completely, but I'm going to implore upon us all that consistency is king. That consistency is key to the process.
Great. Momentum tip number two is speed up and work faster by reducing the drag of unfinished business.
What am I not going to do? What's overcome by events? It's a military term, is OBE. And again, this goes back to another podcast that you and I organized, which is I'm going to get that to-do list. I'm going to get that projects list. Folks, please share that with someone who's involved in where your time goes. Specifically, I'm going to share with my spouse and I'm going to share with my boss. If I can get rid of one line item off of a project, if I can get rid of one line item off of a to-do, I may have just bought myself 5 to 10 hours. I may have just bought myself 15 to 45 minutes. But if I can reduce the drag of unfinished, and by the way, unfinished, quite frankly, generally usually means I'm just not going to do it anymore.
Love it. Third and final tip, and I think this is a great one to end on, is push your limits by adding self-care to your routine.
Oh, man. I know I walk a line right here because I am talking about a soft skill. The better I take care of myself, the more I have to give to you. The more I compromise how much I work, the less I have to give. I had to come to grips with that, right? I had a personal pride going for a long time that 5 or 6 hours of sleep was enough for me. Charles, I got a lot done. I mean, I was working 19 hours a day. Why not? What I realized, maybe it was a young person's game, but here's what the research shows: that how I treat myself psychologically, biologically, and emotionally, how I deal with my physical needs, and how I deal with the mental conversations that go up in my brain, it impacts what I get done and how I get done. A question that I'll ask folks as my intake when I'm working with them when we start our coaching, when I work with people, I go, in the past week, have you done something that was not like you? Everyone knows exactly what I mean. Most people reply in the affirmative. They responded at someone harsher than they should have. They did something and made a mistake. Something happened where they ended that and said, ooh, that was not like me. So my job on the planet, my hope for you, is that you take a look and go, well, what is me? What is like me? And what are the things that I can do to increase the likelihood that that happens? I call it self-care. Please use the word or term that works best for you.
This has been a great episode, Jason. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you.
Absolutely. Probably the easiest way is over on LinkedIn. Simply, my name is Jason Womack. If you listen to more of these IMS podcasts, or if you attend an upcoming IMS session, I hope to see you there. And then, of course, my books are over on Amazon. And if you do get a book, please let me know what you got from it.
Thank you, Dr. Womack, for joining me today again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to share with others and post about it on social media. You can also go to our YouTube channel, which has video recordings of all the episodes of this podcast, along with bite-sized segments called single servings that are designed to answer your most pressing leadership and management questions. Remember, until next time, it's not what you know that counts, but what you do consistently that makes a difference.